All right, you loyal listeners. Welcome to another episode of Agency Intelligence Podcast, where we give you that real agency intelligence and not the artificial that they try to make you believe out here. I'm Cass. I'm back with a guest, a special guest today, Mr. Chris Voss. And we are super excited. I'm going to get right into the conversation. Before I do, I have two people to thank. One of them is an organization. I want to thank Momentum AMP for making a lot of this possible and for being our presenting sponsor at Indie Tech. And I'd also like to thank personally David Carruthers. It was David Carruthers around 6 years ago that I was in his sales training, and he took me one-on-one and he handed me a book. And he said, if you want to change your game, you need to change your communication and you need to change your negotiating tactics. And you need to read this book and follow this gentleman. And that gentleman is Chris Voss, and the book was Never Split the Difference. And I have to say, I can't say that I just follow it like I do the Bible, but, well, I don't even follow the Bible like I follow the Bible. But I'll tell you, I learned a lot from it. And to be able to use those tactics when I actually consciously think about it has changed my career in the insurance business. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Jason, I appreciate the kind words. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited, and I want to just, it's something that I've thought about. Chris, I'm a national speaker, and I normally don't get too nervous, but I have to tell you, I'm a little bit nervous this time. So I'm going to roll right into it with the preparation that I've had. So if you want to add anything at any time, it's just as much as your stage as it is the listeners. So, Chris, is it fair to say that most people are probably losing a negotiation before they even speak the first word? What was your thoughts on that?
Well, the negotiation has already commenced. Now, whether you're winning or losing could be, up in the air, matter of perspective. But the most dangerous negotiation is the one you don't know you're in, which means it's probably already started. You might be a few steps behind, couple moves behind. That doesn't mean you can't catch up.
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting that you say that, so that it's the negotiations already started before you're there. And I think that, can you tell me about a negotiation? Maybe I want to try to come at this. I watched a lot of where you're online and some of your other podcasts and some clips that are out there, and I tried to find things that they hadn't asked you before, but still keeping it within reason. What's a negotiation that you lost? Maybe one that you walked away from and it bothered you. You think of anything there?
Oh, well, yeah, there's been a few. I mean, you can't win everything. One of the things that we teach people in Black Swan method is nothing's guaranteed to work all the time. You just need to do something that works more than anything else. And
I like that.
If it goes bad, then you just got to learn the lesson. Now, the Burnham Sobrero case in the Philippines, that had a lot of things that went bad on it. Negotiations behind the table on our side, lack of cooperation, negotiations behind the table on the other side, which I didn't really see at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And not recognizing that the counterparts got as much chaos behind their table as we do was a real big mistake. And when I look back on that, I think a lot more. We evolved the phrase, there's always a team on the other side. And the most important person on the other side is probably not the designated decision maker, but the deal killer. There's always somebody on the other side sitting back and waiting to kill the deal. If you don't take them into account, you don't deal with them in some way. And that was the biggest lesson. And a bunch of people got killed in that case. A lot of Filipinos, and 2 out of 3 of the Americans that were kidnapped got killed too. So it was my mission, if you will, is to use those lessons to save lives on down the line, which I did, to not dishonor the sacrifice that those people made by what the universe had in store for them, and then just get better and make the world a better place.
And you're talking about the one that was in the book. Am I correct about that? Because
we talked about the Burnham Sobrero case in the Philippines, talked about the shelling case, which immediately preceded it. But the Burnham Sobrero case is in the book, yeah.
Man, if you haven't read the book, it's unbelievable. It really is so good. I was on the edge of my chair. I'm a reader as it is, but I have to admit that's probably one of the fastest books I read because it was just like meaning not the fastest, but it took me the short amount of time because I didn't put it down, and it was really really good. Now, when I went back and read it a couple years later, I was able to slow down because I wanted to try to think about when I'm in negotiation, I guess you should say, or conversations with my current clients. I happen to own an insurance agency. We help businesses with their commercial insurance, specifically nonprofits, and so it's obviously not as high stakes as yours. But then again, at the other end of the day, I mean, my staff and my team put in a lot of work to be able to be successful. And it means a lot when we're finally there at the end. We've prepped, we've put in all the work, and now it's just about the way that you can negotiate out of that. So now we also had Black Swan at one of our events, and I tried to look up his name because I just thought of this about 10 minutes ago. All truthful. And he came in and he spoke in 2022 in Kansas City for us. So we had your group in and he did a fantastic job. And his name is as a speaker for you black gentlemen. And I cannot think of his
Derek,
name.
it was probably
Yes.
Derek.
Yes. Fantastic time. I still have people come to me to this day and say, hey, some of the things that he taught us, we still use. So fantastic. What great gentleman as well. Most upstanding person I've met in my life.
If I
Now,
may, first of all,
come on.
Derek is one of the best people I know. He's been a friend and a colleague for a long time. And actually, he and Jonathan Smith, who's also on my team, they've got a book out right now, Fight Less, Win More, which is a great compliment to Never Split the Difference. And yeah, Derek's a star.
Okay, he is. He told a story at the end that I won't tell, but he literally had people crying. I mean, it was a very very emotional story about one of the negotiations that he had that he was in, and it was pretty amazing. So it was fantastic. You were a lead negotiator on Jill Carroll's kidnapping case
Yeah.
in Iraq, and also Steve Centeni's case
Yeah.
in Gaza.
Yeah.
I wanted to is there any difference about negotiating when you know that somebody's gonna, if you're successful, they're gonna probably tell the story after the negotiation is over? I mean, I know that's probably not in your mind, but is it something that you thought about? What was unique to those situations?
Well, first of all, there's three sides to every story: my side, your side, and the truth. And how I saw things and how I experienced it would be vastly different than how the hostage would have experienced it. So I love the idea that they could get
Wow.
out there and tell their story, tell their point of view on it. Roy Helms is a guy who was kidnapped in Iraq, and he wrote a book called Buried Alive. And I think, I haven't seen it yet, I think there's a docuseries about his kidnapping also. And so, I often wonder, even if I debriefed him after the fact, I didn't get a chance to see and hear about everything that they went through, and particularly the hostages' perspective. I mean, they'll tell you stuff that'll stop you in your tracks, and you want to hear it, you want to appreciate it. So I love that anybody that has the opportunity to tell their story, it'll make them healthier to begin with, to share it.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, there's some crazy stuff they went through that nobody knows about.
Yeah. I get behind the scenes a little bit, things that I think about, maybe other people do. There's somebody who's having a hostage in Iraq, let's just say. Were you in America and you have to get on a plane immediately and come, or do you negotiate it from America? What does that look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, well, behind the scenes, it's kind of crazy. The way we ran the operation when I was there, because no matter, I'm going to be in the U.S. when it starts. And then no matter where it is, it's going to take us 4 days to get there, at least. Not because of flight time, but because of all the approvals and the government protocols and the red tape. So the bad guys are going to be reaching out for the family within 6 to 12 hours of them snatching the person. So we got to get out in front of that. So, and since they're going to be family in the United States, what I have to do as soon as there's a kidnapping, I got to try to get a hostage negotiator in the house of every relative that's inside the United States.
Oh,
And
wow.
then whoever gets called, I need them to tell me what's going on. We got to get out in front of this thing. The ball's been hit in the air. We got to catch it before it hits the ground. And then at that point in time, we start to slowly get into the game, and depending upon what country it is and how hard it is to get permissions to go there, then I'm going to get negotiators in the air as soon as possible and get them on the way. And this is how stupid the deployments were. The Japanese ambassador's residence, there was a hostage taking overrun by some bad guys in Peru. I think it was Peru, like 96. And at the time, the U.S. government had Foreign Emergency Support Team, dedicated jet that theoretically you could go wheels up in 4 hours. Everybody that was a deployable negotiator, whoever you were, you kept a jump bag in the trunk of your car. So you get a call, you grab the jump bag, you got toiletries, you got a couple changes of clothes, you can go straight to the airport and you can get on the plane. Jump on the Festbird, bang, you're there. The guys that flew commercial to the Japanese ambassador's residence in Peru got there before the U.S. government Festbird showed up, because it was quicker to get on a commercial, go home, pack your stuff, book a commercial flight, get on a commercial flight, and get there. It was faster than all the government approvals to get the Festbird in the air and get it landed. The American government, everybody in the State Department, well, I can't answer right away. I got to think about this for a little while. Give me a couple of days to think about it.
Oh my goodness.
And then the government's on the other side, Peru. They're like, oh, well, we got to think about this for a couple of days. So, the reality, and because that was the reality, then the phone is right now. So I got to be prepared to communicate right now, because no matter where it is, it's going to be at least 4 days before I can get boots on the ground.
So then you're probably negotiating to start it in America if they're trying to contact a family in 6 to 12 hours. Am I right about that?
Yeah. I got to get a negotiator to somebody's house, because it's a phone, and if mom's phone hasn't already rang before we get there, it's probably going to ring within an hour or two after we show up. So you got to be ready to get in the game fast.
And you said there's multiple negotiators. Obviously there's more than one, more than just you.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good question. Every law enforcement organization that has hostage negotiators is a handful of full-timers and then a collection of part-timers that do it as an additional duty. It's a passion. It's an extracurricular activity. It's something they love, something they're good at. At the time in the Bureau, we had about 10 full-timers operating out of Quantico. And then we had 400 spread across the country, because then if something kicks off in Utah, we got to have negotiators that can go knock on doors right now. So every organization, NYPD, 3 full-timers working out of one police plaza, 200 guys spread across the city. That's the way everybody has to do it. And then when the bell rings, if you will, then you see who's available and you're ready to go right away.
Wow. Okay. So I did not realize that. This is great behind the scenes. Is it, you read the stories, you get to hear how it went, but it's kind of cool to hear how that was. So I didn't really think about that as being that. And then I guess sometimes you have to have multiple, maybe even on the same, because you had situations where they didn't want to speak to you. Maybe after a couple hours, they didn't trust you or something. And they're like, hey, get somebody else on the phone.
Well, then what we do to avoid that eventuality is they want to talk to mom, dad, brother, sister anyway. We become negotiation coaches. And we will coach you under a high intensity situation, which is why one of the reasons the Black Swan Group, we have evolved into business negotiation coaches.
Makes sense.
Because our bread and butter, besides doing it, simultaneously, we had to be good at 3 things. We had to do it, we had to be able to teach it, and we had to be able to coach it. And I'll give a shameless plug for the Black Swan Group right now. That's why we are better at this than anybody else in the world, because combination of real world experience, ability to teach, and ability to coach. You go to Harvard, they're very smart. The people that are writing on negotiations there are not negotiating for a living. They're teaching for a living. Okay, so they're good teachers. Harvard people are great teachers. They haven't been out of the trenches as often as we have. And then also, they don't coach. Harvard, Wharton, the vast majority of our competitors, negotiations.com, they set up a negotiation game for you to play. But If you need to be coached in the moment, my guys coach too. And if you put those three things together, that's why we're the best.
I could see experience is the best teacher of anything. And so that's what you're saying there. I mean, we've done it. We've been there. And hearing it from those side with those three things, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, well, heck, the Black Swan Group is just the next step after you're not doing that anymore. And
and let me jump in again too,
come
because
on.
experience is the best teacher, but it can't be your only teacher. Now, negotiation is a performance skill. I looked this up recently. Whatever your AI is, you can look it up yourself. Claude, Perplexity, Chat GPT. Say, tell me about the difference between a performance skill and a knowledge skill. What's a knowledge skill? Tax law. You go to an accountant, you need a guy not who's been accounting for a long time, but who's read the tax regulations and knows the in and outs. It's a knowledge skill. Negotiation is a performance skill, like golf. Now, you go out and play golf a lot, you might get better. But if you want to actually get better, first of all, you go to a practice tee, you go to a putting green, and then while you're hitting the ball and you can't figure out why you're hooking it every time, well, you get a coach in there. And he says, all right, move your feet a little bit. Change your grip a little bit. Lean back a little bit. Center the ball here. You need a coach and deliberate practice. Now you start whacking them 250-yard drives. Then you go back out and play in a tournament. Because you practice with a coach, you're now beating everybody.
You a golfer?
I golf badly. You want to feel good about your golf game, you invite me to come out and play with you.
You sound like the rest. I think they say, what, if you can shoot under 90, you're like in the top 5% in the world or something like that. So I'm not in that top 5% either, Chris.
Yeah. I'm there for comic relief and also to keep the golf ball manufacturers in business.
Oh, that's great. One of the things I want to talk about, which you probably talk about a lot, but there's people who haven't read the book, and I think these are the things that want to, is what I like to call in your toolkit. I've got a list of things here that you use, and I would like to try to go through them, give them enough so that they do. I believe hearing you is incredible, but one of the things I love about reading is you can literally create the story you want in your imagination, and I think that helps really get it burnt into your mind. One of the things I have to me personally, I didn't actually know the name of it, but I'll get to the one that I use a lot. But I love mirroring.
Yeah.
Because I think mirroring is just something that a lot of us probably use naturally, and we don't realize that we're doing it, but we're just doing it because we don't understand that it's a tactic. Out of the things you have here, mirroring, labeling, calibrated questions, all those, what is one do you think is probably the most relevant to business, and specifically maybe for insurance? When we're talking to clients about their auto, their home, their business, their life insurance, what are some of those that you think are probably the most important?
In general terms, it's the labels. To say it seems like, it looks like, it feels like. You put a label as a verbal observation of an emotional dynamic, and you slap a label on it. It seems like something just crossed your mind. Now, we're actually in the process of developing a certification program, and I didn't really realize it, but of the skills, the labels are the ones that change depending upon where the other side's coming from. Now, what do I mean by that? It's straight collaborative negotiation. The other side doesn't really have any likes or dislikes about you. They see you as neutral. And, they're open. They're collaborative. Well, the label seems like you're interested in solving a problem. That's probably how an insurance agent would start. In general terms, they're probably going to trust you. It's probably straight collaborative from the beginning. Now, next level up is when they're collaborative, but they're distrustful of the situation, the topic. It's a little bit contentious for them. It's got them defensive. They're going to be a little argumentative, a little bit disagreeable. That's the next level up. Now, they're collaborative with you, but they're disagreeable with the situation. And with enough experience in your world, you can kind of call it out, and you go from "it seems like" to "it's probably." Now that's the next level up on a label. It's probably frustrated you for a long time. You're probably a little leery of insurance salesmen. You're probably a little leery of financial advisors. Now, this is empathy. This is not that they should be, but this is because you know enough from the situation based on interactions they've had with other people. This is probably the case. Again, this is changing the label slightly to be a little more astute. And then finally, if they're angry at the situation and at you, you don't go from "it seems" to "you probably," you go to "I know." When
Mm,
based on the circumstances, the way they're talking to you, they want you to know. Now, what's an example of that? I'll switch to hotels.
okay.
This is why basically they don't teach this in hotels, because in the certification process, we came across this recently, and it's the first time I realized. You asked me what's the most adaptable tool. It's the label. My people that have mastered this use labels all over the place. That's the only thing they know. Let's say you're mad at your hotel. Let's say that, for 2 days in a row, you didn't get house cleaning in your room. You were out of towels the day before. You called them and told them. Now you're up in the morning. You got no towels. They're not doing housekeeping. You're upset. You go down to the front desk and you want to lodge a complaint. You start barking at the person in the front desk for good reason. And if they say, "It seems like you're angry," you're going to be like, "It seems like I'm angry? It seems like you haven't made up my room for 2 days in a row. I didn't have," you're barking at him. You don't want that guy behind the desk to be uncertain. Now, the same guy or gal behind the desk goes, "I know we let you down." You'll be like, "Oh,
That is.
all right, they get it."
Mm-hmm.
And that's a top level label. Now, all of our other skills, and there are 9 of them in total, they don't really change based on the severity of the conversation. Like
Ah,
if
okay.
you're using mirroring, repeating the last 3 words of what somebody said, no matter which level of conversation you're in, the mirror structure pretty much stays the same. But the label adapts to the situation, and that's why it's really the Swiss Army knife of all the tools. And
Gotcha.
if you master labels in a Black Swan method, you could pretty much get by just with labels because they're so effective.
So effective, and there's different levels of it, as you said. I just didn't even realize that. You are so right. And in your example of the hotel is so right, because when they do, you get this calming feeling when they say, "Hey, I know we let you down,"
Yeah.
right? And you do. It's weird too. You don't even you can't. It's hard to even describe what that feeling is. So that's really good. Now you call it labeling for a specific reason. I know when I talk to people, they say to me, like, "Jason, like, why did he call it labeling? What's the reason for what labeling means there,
Yeah,
Chris?"
great question. I mean, the original hostage negotiation skills, and there were 8 of them, it was emotion labeling. And, the focus was on the emotion, an emotion label. You sound angry.
Okay.
And that happened to be a very good label 999% of the time, because basically, whether the bad guy liked law enforcement or not, the individual hostage negotiator that he was talking to was a little bit more of a neutral third party, and you could make a verbal observation like that over an emotion. So I get out of the bureau and I'm adapting the skills along with my son Brandon. My son Brandon was immersed in this, from the age of 4. So he's got it drilled into his DNA like nobody,
I
you've
can
ever
only
seen.
imagine.
Oh yeah, and I didn't know that till it was too late. He started using it to get himself out of trouble in high school. Like he's like, "I could use this stuff to get myself out of trouble. This is great. I got more latitude now." Oh god, he's
Smart
got some
kid.
stories.
Smart kid who paid attention to what dad was saying,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's good. That's good.
So
That's
anyway,
good.
we're adapting, and we try to think of other names. Like, is it a ping? Is it is it a probe? Because you're probing for information with a label. So should we call it a probe? And
Mhm.
then why were we thinking ping? Well, it's kind of like sonar. When your submarine's underwater and they're feeling their way around, they send out pings, and how the information, the sound reflects and comes back. That's what tells you what's really going on. And a label is designed to get a response that you can analyze. So it's kind of like sonar.
It
And we
is.
experimented at different times, calling it different terms when I was teaching at Georgetown. And it just never felt right. And finally we said, like, look, let's just call it a label. Let's drop off the word emotion, because we're not just labeling emotions, we're labeling dynamics. If your body language changes, and I'll say, it seemed like something just crossed your mind, that's a label of an affect. And we just figured the label was the most straightforward, generic word, ideally required the least amount of explanation, the most self-defining. And that's why we ended up on labels.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I'm putting myself as you're talking and listening to you. I'm putting myself sitting in front of my prospect specifically, and I am getting a little pushback or that, hey, this insurance agent. Now, normally I was invited in, so there's some a level of respect here. But you are trying to probe for that. I mean, one of the things that we get kind of taught is that really the relationship they have with their current agent is one of the most driving factors of the process. You can have the greatest insurance policy, the other agent does too, but it's the relationship they have, and having to probe that and try to, I guess, label that situation to get that out. I mean, do you play golf with him on Wednesday, or have you never heard from him in 10 days or 10 months?
Right.
That's a different relationship that they
Right.
have there. So
Yeah.
that would
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah.
That would make sense. One of the other things that I love, and I got this, I really like this, and I've seen you do this on a couple podcasts that I watched, but getting getting people, I'm gonna say it, and I'm gonna say it wrong, Chris. But people like to answer in no. So it's getting them to actually say no to something that you're getting trying to get them to say yes to, if that makes sense. And I really, it's one of my favorites when you really think about it, because you can use it very easily if you know what you're doing. Am I describing it correctly and
Yeah.
how it works?
It scares the hell out of people, because, we've been conditioned getting to yes. We've conditioned that yes is success. So by definition, no must be failure. And if you can clean that out of your brain, like if you could wipe that out of your brain entirely,
Mhm.
and look at no as simply an answer, but then realize that everybody feels safe when they say no. You're a
Mhm.
teenager, dad can't, I know, even before you find out what they were going to say. Uh, do you agree? I don't know. I don't know what I'm agreeing to. Do you disagree? Well, no, I don't disagree, but I need to hear more. See the difference in those answers. The first one, I don't know what I'm agreeing to. The guy's concerned and worried. No, I don't disagree, but I need to hear more. The guy's listening. Those are completely different perspectives, just from switching from yes to no.
Mhm. And it and what's an example? How do you how could you get somebody to actually get them to say when they're agreeing to something, but they're actually saying no? You have one off the top of your head, maybe?
Yeah, say, are you against this?
They
Oh,
would say no
yeah,
to the
and
beginning.
like we're teaching a hospital holding company. It's probably 7-8 years ago now,
Okay.
and we're teaching this whole no concept. And so one of the women in the course, she gets up and leaves the room, and she says to herself, "You know what? I'm gonna find out right now whether or not this works." Now she's had some sort of administrative system that she's been trying to implement in this one hospital, and the head nurse has been completely against it the whole time. She's asking yes questions, the head nurse saying no. And this woman even says to me, she's in no mode, which means no matter what I say, she's going to say no. I'm like, all right, awesome. Change your question. She's like, all right, really? So she's going to test it. She goes out and she calls in the hall. She calls a nurse on the phone. Instead of saying, would you like to agree to implement this program? She says, are you against implementing this? And her nurse says, no, let's go ahead. And she walks back in a room and she says, you guys are not going to believe what just happened. Like, you know what? Since I thought this was nonsense and I wanted to prove that it was nonsense, I went out to test it. I am shocked
Wow.
at the difference.
Wow. And Chris, what is that? Is that control? Is that the reason why the person just is wanting to say no? Is it as a control factor in the conversation?
Well, it's about feelings, if you will, the feeling of control, not actual control. And how do people get that? It's the Pavlov's dog, the Pavlovian response. You ring the bell, you feed the dog. You ring the bell, you feed the dog. Now, every time the bell rings, the dog drools because he's been conditioned what's going to happen after he hears that sound. So what have we been conditioned after we say yes? We probably just agreed to something that's not good for us. Would you like to stay in a 5-star resort anytime you want, virtually for free? Buy this timeshare. Yeah, I want to stay in a 5-star resort. Yeah, I'm entitled to all this stuff. And then in the fine print, they yesed you into this timeshare. Like, well, you got to pay this amount of money and you got to schedule with all the other timeshare people. And in point of fact, you're on the hook for the next 10 years for a large amount of money for something you can't schedule. That's the yes momentum. And that's why, there are people out there, lawyers, who make a living getting you out of timeshare agreements because you got bamboozled. Now, the feeling was you said yes to stuff, and then there was this hook. And it might have been a bear trap, and you might have had to gnaw off your arm to get out of it. So how do you avoid these hooks and these bear traps? Just automatically say no.
They know, yeah.
Now you're Pavlov's dog. Whenever you say no, you feel safe and in control.
Gotcha.
And what does that feeling do? It lets you calmly evaluate the options.
Yeah, I love
And it's either a straight agreement or the questions you need to have answered. Like you're an insurance salesman, you're trying to talk to somebody about a policy. Does this policy look stupid to you? And they're going to say no, but here's what I need to know. They're going to be honest with you about their reservations at that point. What you're looking for is honest answers. Now, would you like to do this? Yeah, I'd like to do it, but here's what I need to know. People are conditioned that every time they say yes, and the yes momentum defines it, that each yes is a micro agreement or a tie down.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I say yes, you've tied me down. You've cornered me. Pretty soon, you want to corner me, so I got nowhere to go. Now I'm totally defensive. Any animal that gets cornered becomes very dangerous and then starts to lash out. Completely overtaken by defensiveness, anger, emotions, just no rationality there at all. So this has a 180-degree effect. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
And it's so effective.
Wow. It is. And I'm really, the last one, because we have a whole ton and I don't want to go through them all, but the last one that I actually use in my talks when I'm trying to get a prospect to allow me to have a meeting. One of the things we focus on, as I said, is nonprofits, and we go specifically after workers' comp. That's one of the only policies that the client can actually control the cost. And they can do it without going too deep into it, this mod that they develop. Okay. Just knowing that. And one of the things, and David taught me this, who uses I think he's probably studied your tactics and knows them through and through, just not someone like me who read the book and every once in a while when it comes to them, they think of it. And he taught me that when you go to talk to somebody and you say, hey, did you realize the 2 yeses and a no is the one that we use? And did you realize that you're paying 20 to 30% more than your competitor in your workers' comp? They're usually going to say no because they don't know that. And have you had somebody who's come in and shown you some technology that can actually that you can utilize and we can utilize it together to lower that? No, I haven't. Well, wouldn't it make sense then that you would give me 20 minutes of your time to be able to show that to you? Chris, I can't tell you how effective that is because at that point in time, to say no to that, which I've had that, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, but to say no to that at that on that third time
Right.
is silly. I mean, they've already agreed that they've got this problem by saying no. They didn't know, but I know because I know the competitors, and then they know that they haven't had anybody who's going to come in and show them that. That is something that we use at our agency, and I gotta tell you, it's a highly effective. Just listening to that, anything that you would say differently? I know you don't know the product or anything, but any way to polish that up?
Well, you're nailing it. You created a tremendous amount of safety with the two no's. I mean, and I'm not saying it's going to make it any better.
Okay.
I'd make the last one a no also. I'd say, is it a ridiculous idea for me to show this to you?
Oh, okay. Oh, I love it. That right from the man. Okay, I love that. Thank you very much. I've had a lot of success with that. Now I'm kind of curious to do it. And I have to admit, I don't do a lot of sales anymore, but I teach other young guys and gals to do it. And it's what's ironic is the one or two that use it a lot, they get into more deals, you know? So
I have
that's
no doubt. I mean, and it almost might be worth experiencing, doing them back and forth because again, the fact that you got two no's to start with, you've created a lot of safety and security at that point in time, which is really what you're after. And
Mhm.
so the third one may or may not need to be a no. Might the fear of yes may have been wiped away by the first two no's. So I find it a fascinating dynamic, and I'm not 1,000% sure
Okay.
that a third no is going to increase your success rate because you already got two no's. So it's
Yeah.
an interesting, it's a variable to be tested.
Mhm. It is. It is. And and I guess in your situation when you were negotiating and hostages and someone's life is on the line, did you do the same thing? Did you have to test or did you just kind of go with what you knew or it was just the moment and the way that you felt about it? Does that make sense? Kind of like you just did now by hearing this?
It was a lot of feel but what I mentioned before previously, the 8 hostage negotiation skills, not one of them is designed to get a yes, not one. And it took me a really long time to realize that. I mean,
Wow.
yes was just a little bit of a throwaway, but they're all designed to create an agreement
Mm.
which is implementable. So, for example, one of my every hostage negotiator, if you're any good, you spend a lot of time scripting out the first 3 things you're gonna say, and after that is total ad lib.
Oh, wow.
And so my script was, "Hi, I'm Chris. I'm here to talk to you about coming out." "I'm not coming out. I never said I was gonna come out." "I know you're not ready to come out now, but I want you to know in order to get you out of there safely so you don't get hurt, here's what it's gonna look like when you are."
Mm.
Now, I'm not going for yes at any given point in time there. I'm trying to paint a picture of safety and security in an implemental agreement. If we've agreed that you're coming out, your real worry is number one, are you going to get shot when you come out? That's probably not going to happen. But what you're really worried about is are the guys that cuff you going to be a little overzealous? They're going to slam you on the ground. Are you going to get treated roughly? Is anybody going to be real jumpy? You're going to want to know what the agreement looks like. And so, as a hostage negotiator, what I am is saying, I know you're not ready now, but when you are, here's what it's going to look like.
Wow. 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 And as you're speaking there, Chris, I'm putting myself once again back in front of that prospect and helping them understand that's what they want to know too is what does this look like if we go down this journey of you allowing and helping me in this situation? What's it going to look like? What's the outcome? What's the process going to look like? It lowers the temperature a little bit, I
You're
guess.
getting it exactly.
Okay.
That's exact, and that's why. See, a, a lot of people, I find it interesting that you were handed the book by an experienced salesperson who gave it to you when you were experienced. what we hear from a lot of people is who are experienced is this plugs the holes I always felt was there and I didn't realize it. And what we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about now is, the prospects really want to know what's going to look like going forward.
Mm-hmm.
How am I safe? How am I secure? Because otherwise I don't know what's there and I'm scared because I don't know what's there.
When life shows me things that are unfamiliar and I don't know the end, I'm scared. So that just, it's these things that you realize. I guess you just go through situations that you realize, like all this stuff you're doing negotiating is something that we all encounter in our everyday life. We just haven't literally stopped and thought about, wow, I'm anxious about something right now because I don't know how it's going to go or how it's going to end. So that's really, really good. That's really, really good. Any one of those other tools that we maybe left off that you might want to add?
You know what? One that gets undersold a lot. I'll add two.
Okay.
First of all, is dynamic silence. And
Mm,
are we allowed to use profanity on this podcast?
absolutely, we are.
No,
Lord knows I have before, Chris.
I'm doing some training for the Carpenters Union, probably about a year and a half ago. And I love these guys because they're blue collar like me. Like they are smart. Like if you're a carpenter, you just damn near aerospace engineer because these guys got to figure out everything. Like they
You
are
do.
engineers to the nth degree.
It's true.
So if they don't actually have a PhD, they got a PhD brain and they're blue collar. So what am I going for? When we talked about dynamic silence, the head of the Carpenters Union says, "Yeah, we call that you got to get a PhD and shut the up." So you got to have a PhD and going dead silent because that's in many cases when the magic happens. Like if you've outlined what we were talking about, what the implementation of this looks like. Here's the safety, here's the security. After you've done that, you got to go dead silent because in painting a picture and creating a feeling of safety and security in the other person, we now know it takes at least 6 seconds for the feeling, which is neurochemicals, for the neurochemicals of oxytocin and serotonin, which is safety and bonding. When they get triggered in your brain, it takes 6 seconds for them to go through the system.
Mm.
So if you've done a great job in establishing a relationship and painting a picture, or even feeling them out, seems like you're uncertain. Get a PhD and shut the heck up because you got to let it have its impact, its effect. If you open your mouth before they do, or inside of 6 seconds, you just blew the magic spell that you just cast. And you gotta let it 6 seconds. Now, if they don't say anything, you could label, you could mirror, you could say, it seems like you're thinking about this, but you got in those 6 seconds, they're probably gonna say something that you need to hear. So because the neurochemicals take 6 seconds to go through the system, let them think, let them feel it, let them imagine it, and wait and watch. You're gonna get a lot of visual information, listen with your eyes. And if you see a blank look or positive look, do not say anything.
Mm.
The only problem is if you see what appears to be a negative look. Now, you got to be careful with a negative look because many people, their negative look is intense thinking. I happen to have a resting serial killer face. When I'm thinking deeply about what you just said, I look like I'm imagining chopping you up in a basement and feeding you to the neighbor's dog. But I'm just thinking about what you said. I will scare you with my look of intense listening. So how do you label that if you see that? You don't know whether or not I'm thinking about feeding you to the neighbor's dog or whether or not I'm listening. You say, seems like you're really thinking about this. They'll tell you what they're thinking about.
That was 6 seconds.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear it. And man, it's easy right now. We're talking about it, but when you got that prospect or that client right in front of you, that's a long 6 seconds. I can only imagine. Wow.
It
Yeah. It's
feels
something
excruciating, and if you're not used to it.
my father-in-law, who's a retired insurance agent, or ironically enough, it's just wild. He used to tell me, he's old school salesperson. He would tell me that silence means consent. And I never understood what that meant until I got older, and then he decided to tell me, Jason, he wasn't really serious about that. But that's what he would always tell me. Silence means consent. And I think he was saying along the same line of you is you've said something, let it sink in. Now let's go to the neurochemicals. Like you've just read that, you've found out that asked a doctor, you've read that somewhere. It takes 6 seconds for it to get into your body and actually make a reaction?
Well, we've been studying the neurochemicals for a while, really ever since I got turned on to Andrew Huberman's podcast, because that's one of the best sources of current scientific data that's vetted that I can find on human
Okay.
behavior, growth, improvement. And so then the 6 seconds mark came from Derek Gaunt, and Derek is an analyst to the core. Like Derek digs up information behind everything that we talk about. He is my reliable source of known reliability. In law enforcement, if somebody told us something, there'd be two criteria. Is it a known source, and are they known to be reliable? Could be an unknown source, unknown reliability. Derek's the known source of known reliability. Well,
Gotcha.
Derek tells me that it takes 6 seconds for the neurochemicals to go through the system. I'm willing to bet on that.
And what was that podcast?
All my other data, almost all of it's from Andrew Huberman Labs podcast. I'm listening to one now about, it's a combination of how to learn better, principally through physical activity, and which is, what I'm into, both longevity, vitality, and getting smarter.
You said you had one more tool. Did you remember what that was?
It's really, really tone of voice. And Derek and I just agreed fairly recently we're going to designate tone as a skill, and it fits to our golfing analogy. Each one of our tools in the toolbox, we compare it to a golf club, and then the tone is your grip on the club. And if you don't have a good grip on the club, you're not going to hit the ball well.
Ah,
So your skills, if you don't have a good tone of voice and you're using a tone of voice that works for that skill, the skill is going to be far less effective. So we're calling tone the ninth skill, and it's like the grip on a golf club.
okay. Well, thank you very much for those. Those are great. It's so cool to have read them, to try to practice them, and then here you are right here, like walking me and the audience through it. The loyal listeners are super excited. I bet you they are, because I know I am. Um, Chris, as we slowly start to wrap this up, I want to ask you this. So on February 3rd, you're going to be closing out our event, Indie Tech of 2027. It's funny, we signed up a long time ago with you, and time's going by fast. Before you know it, you and I will be shaking hands face to face. And we also have another guy by the name of Josh Braun. He's on the first day on Monday. And he teaches a lot of the stuff that you have done. And I had an agent ask me the other day. He said, Jason, it's so unique that you're having people who are teaching and helping us with communication. And this is a technology conference. And I did this purposely. I did it based on the fact that we're all looking at our phones all the time. I mean, they say that there's an epidemic of 20-year-olds who aren't leaving the house and they don't know how to communicate. And it's not so much they don't know how to communicate, they don't know how to take rejection. And so I wanted, as we're at this tech show and everybody's talking about AI and everybody's talking about technology, to understand that, AI and technology is an enhancer of what we do as a human, and we still need to be able to communicate. And I thought that's one of the great things about it, is that's why we have someone like you there to really try to kind of hone in on the fact that communication. And I'd like to get your thoughts though on AI. I don't know how much you use it or whatever, but how do you see it changing the way communication is, just trying to dig into your head? Is I know talking face to face or, person to person has been what's made you very, very successful in mastering that. Do you see AI changing that any for the good, for the bad?
Yeah, there's no neutral ground on it. Using AI either makes you smarter or makes you dumber. And everybody on my team, we're all using it constantly. We're learning a lot about it. We spent an entire day working on it a week ago today. So we're using it to enhance our thoughts, to get smarter, to solve more problems. Simultaneously, the fascinating thing, which, as soon as I point it out, you'll be like, of course. AI is written and programmed by people who are not good at communicating. And
Wow.
so they think that good communication is long-winded, loquacious, lots of multisyllable words. So whatever AI you're using, it'll train to you. You got to start training it to give you simpler, more concise answers, get to the point answers. And I didn't really realize it was true till I was working with the guy that put on the workshop for us, and we're running something with Claude the very next day. And he looks at me like, he says, like, dude, your Claude is so much harder to talk to than mine is. And I went like, oh. And he calls it slapping around. He's been slapping his Claude around to give it straight answers for a year. I just started, and Claude is still giving me long-winded answers that suck the life out of me so that I can understand them. So your question about AI, use it to make you smarter, use it as a shortcut, realize that the way it was taught to communicate is, number one, not the best way to communicate overall, because loquaciousness does not, long-windedness doesn't win prizes. Concise, clear communication does. Tailor whatever AI you're using to you. Treat it like an assistant that's giving you good information but needs training.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, because you can't use it as a substitute for your thinking, you can use it to help cut down on the noise so that your thoughts can be that much better. And when you get there, then you're gonna love it. And it's gonna make your thoughts better.
Really well said. And I love how you said short and concise, because I think a lot of people, sometimes even myself, we think that long-winded, it's like, well, and I guess we do that because, well, maybe they didn't understand me, so let me elaborate, or, hey,
Right.
let me understand. And I think I'm kind of almost insulting the intelligence of maybe somebody else that I'm talking to by me assuming that they don't understand something because it's short and concise.
Right.
So yeah. I could see that. One of the things, like, never split the difference. When we hear that title, am I correct that has to do with the fact that you've talked about this before, that compromise is not a win in this situation? Is that kind of what that is meaning? And when you use that title, never split the difference?
What it really boils down to is, compromise is lose-lose.
Elaborate on that if you would, Chris.
Well, there's two problems. First problem is the other side's trying to legitimately compromise with you in a fair way. And that ain't the best answer. Half of your idea, half of my idea. Should I wear brown shoes? Should I wear black shoes? Wear one black, one brown. That's stupid.
That's stupid.
Or, the greatest steel, one of the greatest creations. Steel is carbon and iron. Now, let's say each one, the carbon team and the iron team. Well, let's compromise. We'll go 50-50. Steel is 2% carbon. So the blend is what you're looking for. And you can't get the blend right by going 50-50. If it was half carbon and half iron, we never would have had steel.
Great example, Chris.
Steel is only 2% carbon. So you're looking for the proper blend, as opposed to getting lazy and half your idea, half my idea, and then you're gonna look silly.
Now, imagine with your wife or your significant other, it might be better to be more along the 50-50 line and just different with everybody else. I'm saying that facetiously.
Well, your significant other, find out where she's coming from. there was, and I'm gonna throw out a shameless commercial, and
Okay,
then
that's fine.
I'm gonna tell you the Christmas tree story. Shameless commercial. Join the Black Swan community. Go to our website, blackswanltd.com. Join up the community for free. These are people that are studying together to get better at negotiations. One of the things you got to do is you got to practice. You got to practice with people that know the skills, and you got to get you don't want false positives. What's a false positive? You go to Harvard, you're going to negotiate the sale of a radio station. Well, you ain't neither buying nor selling a radio station. So whatever works in that 45-minute negotiation is going to give you false positives. And then you're going to wonder why you can't do the skills in real life. You got to come someplace where you're going to get true positives, true negatives. Black Swan community, you get to practice with people who are in your same profession so you guys help each other get better. Now, the Christmas tree story. Husband and wife debating over a Christmas tree. Husband wants an artificial tree, right? Wife wants a real tree. Husband's got practical reasons. Artificial tree, you buy it once. We know what it's going to look like every year. It's not going to catch on fire. We don't got to water it. We don't get needles all over the house. We got a pet. The dog ain't going to come by and he's not going to water on his own the artificial tree because of the smell. It's got all these practical reasons.
Does.
What's the compromise? Well, one year we'll do a real tree. The next year we'll do the artificial tree. We'll compromise. We'll each get what we want. No. She's so insistent that he finally decides to use a label to find out what's going on. And he's taking a guess, a scientific wild ass guess, a swag. If somebody's really clinging to something, it's in the past. Something happened in the past. You want to unearth that. So he's just guessing. He says, it seems like you had real trees growing up. And she goes, yes. And the smell of a Christmas tree reminds me of the feelings I had with my brothers and sisters and the joy that we shared over Christmas. And every time I smell a tree, I'm reminded of the love of my family. And I want our children to have that same experience.
Wow.
There was no compromise. They got real trees for the rest of their lives together because of what it created.
And it makes more sense to him as well in this scenario that, okay, there's a reason behind this. There's a feeling that makes sense. Yes. Because everything else he said was practical. And I have to admit, Chris, you did a very good job at coming up with practical reasons why you don't need the tree. You just didn't give one or two. You gave like six. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. So, yeah.
That's where he was coming from. He was logical, but she knew about the feeling, the bond, and the creation of family all over the smell of a Christmas tree. So, yeah, never split the difference.
Last question regarding the Christmas tree. Is that something that's happened in your life, or did you just come up with that story to explain the point?
Oh, no, it was one of my students at Georgetown wrote a paper. The husband wrote the paper because he was using the skills and he thought he was going to get his way. He thought if he dug it out that she would say like, oh, okay, yeah, now that I said it out loud, it ain't that important. So he was so caught off guard by where she was coming from. And for me, it was a perfect paper because it's a classic illustration in a negotiation. The other side might actually have a better way.
Yeah. And he opened it up by the label. It seems that, so that I caught that. It was fantastic. Chris, I think this is all the time that we are allowed. I could sit here and go forever, but I assume you have other things to do in life. I really do greatly appreciate you taking your time. I would like to, if you give you a 10, 15, 20 seconds, if you have anything, maybe talk about the Black Swan. If I know you've mentioned it a couple times, but closing it up.
Yeah, well, the fun stuff about learning the Black Swan method and the skills is you enjoy life more. I'm not kidding you. The secondary benefit is you're going to make a lot more money. You will close more deals. You will have stronger business relationships. You will have less friction in your negotiations. You will have outcomes better than you could have imagined. Secondary benefit is the money. Primary benefit, and one of the guys that I coach personally, who's making a lot of money before I ever ran across him, he said to me after I coached him a few times, he says, I now realize that I saw the world in black and white and I see it in color now. So you'll enjoy life a lot more when you throw that stuff into your conversations.
Well said. Well said. Wow, that's good. He sees color now. Thank you, Chris. Once again, I appreciate it very much. And to all you loyal listeners, I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. I know this was longer than normal, but when I had Chris, I wanted to make sure that I was able to get through everything to really provide you an experience. Please get out there and read some of his books. Chris, what was the other book that you mentioned from your partners, Derek and them?
Fight Less, Win More, Jonathan Smith and Derek Gaunt.
That's right. Go out there and check that out. And also, if this is the first time you've been listening to this podcast, because you saw that I was interviewing Chris Voss, thank you and welcome to Agency Intelligence Podcast. Please be sure to follow us on all the places that you can on where they deliver the podcast, wherever you're listening. And for all you loyal listeners, you know what I do because I do it for you. Tell me your thoughts and tell me your ideas, and I'm going to tell the world what you have to say. This has been Jason Cass, and this is Chris Voss. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason.